America's first superbike, the Crocker motorcycle. I'm Matt Walksler, and this is a drive for history. It's the final week of our summer-long event, and we've been firing up some of the most significant and rare machines inside Wheels Through Time. Now, the museum's been closed throughout 2020 due to COVID-19, so we've been unable to share these bikes in person. That's why we created the Drive for History, to bring the bikes to you guys and help raise some much-needed funds to help us preserve this history for generations to come. Today, we're cranking up the 1937 Crocker Hemi head, and this bike is as bad as they come. America's first superbike. Crocker was actually started in Los Angeles by a fella named Al Crocker in 1933-34. Crocker used to be an Indian dealer, moved to California, and actually jumped into the speedway racing circuit, producing a small, limited number of 500cc high compression alcohol burners for speedway racing. Single speed, no brakes, short tracks. This Crocker Speedway bikes were upwards of 40-45 horsepower out of a single cylinder machine. Crocker jumped into the big twin market and made his first twin cylinder machines in 1936, often referred to as the Crocker Hemi. 61 cubic inches, 3-speed transmissions, and again, this is America's first superbike. Crocker even offered a guarantee to his customers, said if you get beat on one of my motorcycles by a stock Harley or an Indian, you get your money back. As far as we know, Crocker never had to give any money back. So they made less than 100 Crockers in total from 100 big twin Crockers in total from 1936 to 42. Today, just a handful survive. Maybe 40 or 50 of those machines are complete and on the road today. So incredibly rare to see a Crocker motorcycle, and even more rare to be able to find one to add to your collection. These machines nowadays are selling upwards of $750,000 and above. So absolutely incredible motorcycle, and really one of the machines that's become as desirable and sought after as any other American motorcycle on the planet. Now, as you can see, the Crocker has a style that's really unrivaled by any other motorcycle that was on the market at this time. So beautiful, starting with the power plant, beautiful 61 cubic inch hemispherical head, exposed valve train, 61 cubic inch engine. These things absolutely produced incredible power, upwards of 55, maybe even 60 horsepower out of some of the big Crockers. So the Hemi heads, and again, they only made maybe 25 to 30 of the Hemi head models before going to a parallel overhead valve model. The Hemi heads are most identifiable by the Crocker rocker boxes, the shiny rocker boxes. Believe it or not, there's 2 push rods inside of this, inside of the single push rod tube here. This example, driven by an Edison front mount magneto, same magneto that Harley-Davidson used on some of their racing machines. Indian used them on racing and stock motorcycles. So single cam, double oil pumps, the Crocker engine, there's nothing like it in the world today, guys. These things absolutely make incredible power, and it's all wrapped into an ultra lightweight, heavy duty, durable chassis. So you've got the single down tube frame here. The Crocker engine is kind of the Crocker frame is kind of a keystone type of frame, where the engine's actually a stressed member. It's held in with these motor plates and a bolt-in skid plate here. You've got the girder front end, ultra stiff and heavy duty. Short little small risers with really kind of an aggressive type of handlebar. Same style cycle ray headlight that Harley-Davidson used. Now, the gas tanks on the Crocker, cast aluminum gas tanks. Heavy duty as they get. Best part about the cast aluminum gas tanks is they don't rust inside. So nowadays, as these machines age, 60, 70, 80 years old, they're clean inside, and without the with the cast aluminum, they don't develop small pinholes like some of your Harley-Davidson and Indian sheet metal. So really incredible stuff. Ultra stylized, beautiful dash here. You can see there's the switch for on, dim, and bright. That's your headlight switch, amp gauge, and then your 100-mile-an-hour speedo right here. Last time we had this thing out, we were running right about 65 miles per hour. So the Crocker is a common favorite and one of those machines that you just rarely get to see today. Now, one of the beauties of the hemispherical combustion chamber engine, or all Crocker twin engines in general, is that the chassis that these were set in really had as beefy and as heavy duty of a transmission as was available back then. And now, if you were to take the sprocket cover off here, the transmission case is actually part of the frame. So at the bottom of this seat post tube, you actually have a housing here that holds your transmission. It's bolted on, or the transmission is bolted in with a left side plate and a right side plate, counter shaft and main shaft assemblies. So 3-speed transmission. And again, the Crocker transmissions were rated, I think they say they rated them up to 300 horsepower. Of course, no motorcycle of that age produces nearly enough horsepower to cause any problems for this transmission. So fully enclosed primary drive over on the other side here, very much like Indians of the day, runs in oil full time. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this machine is magneto ignition, but it still has the generator to be able to power the headlights, and the taillights, and the horn. Standard M5 Linkert carburetor, very same carburetor that Harley-Davidson used on their early knuckleheads. So the thing about the Crocker is almost every part, and especially every significant piece, was handmade by Crocker himself. Everything from the engine cases, cylinders, heads, primary drive, the front end, the frame, the gas tanks, fenders are Crocker their own, hubs, brakes, floorboards, clutch pedal, all of the significant components in the Crocker were handmade by Al Crocker and his team. Again, a few components crossed over from either Indian or Harley. So the Crocker uses the Kelsey Hayes rims, same rims as the Harley-Davidsons of the era. Actually, I've heard rumors that Harley-Davidson contacted Kelsey Hayes, and Crocker, the reputation of the Crocker, I should say, gave Harley-Davidson executives such a fit that they actually called Kelsey Hayes and threatened to boycott their company if Kelsey Hayes continued to sell to Crocker. Linkert M5 carburetor, again, same carburetor that Harley-Davidson uses on the knuckleheads. Magneto generator, Corbin speedometer, cycle ray headlight, few pieces crossed over, as was fairly common back then, but for the most part, this machine is entirely a handmade bike by Al Crocker from Los Angeles. And again, super bikes. They make noise like you wouldn't believe. Now, this motorcycle is actually responsible. It's kind of referred to as Dale's burnout bike. This bike is responsible for thousands and thousands of burnouts right here inside the museum. For those of y'all that have visited Wheels Through Time before, there's a whole aisle in back that's filled with black rubber on the floor. Almost every single one of those strips of rubber was laid down by this 1937 Crocker motorcycle. So my dad purchased this bike in the mid-1990s from a fella in Southern California, brought the bike home immediately, and it became one of his treasured machines and something that we're proud to display here at Wheels Through Time. So we're going to fire this machine up. Rare opportunity to hear a Crocker motorcycle crank up and go. Right off the bat, you guys are going to hear this thing rumble. Listen to the raspy sound that it makes when you wick the throttle. And again, just a joy and a pleasure to be able to fire one of these bikes at all. And this one runs as good as any of them. So let's get this thing cranked up and going. We turn the fuel on. Cold start. So we're going to choke this bike 3 times. Choke on, a couple kicks with the kill switch. 1, 2, 3, and you can hear that breather breathing. And we ought to be 1 to go, guys. Fingers crossed. Oh! 3rd time's the charm. exposed. The rocker arms are partially enclosed, but you can see the valves working down there. Exhaust on the outside, intakes on the inside, all feeding through this tiny little manifold. America's first superbike. There you have it, guys. Doesn't get much cooler than a Crocker Hemi. One of just a handful that remain today, one of very few that get run on a semi-regular basis. And I guarantee you one thing, you won't see any more Crockers other than this one doing burnouts inside the museum. Thanks for tuning into the Drive for History, guys. We're going to be firing up more rare machines this week. It's the final week of our Drive for History. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys have been enjoying what you see, make sure you check out driveforhistory.com and help support the museum that runs today. Thanks for all your support. We'll see you tomorrow.